Good morning, everybody.
Hello, we're going to be starting in just about a minute to give everyone just a little bit of a chance to log in if they haven't yet. All right, hello and welcome to Society Insurance's Risk Control webinar on disaster recovery, developing a business continuity plan. We have a lot of people logged in. It's awesome to see everybody, and looks like there's some more people logging in, so we'll have a few more joining us. This webinar will run for about 45 minutes. We're recording the webinar, and shortly after the presentation today, it'll be formatted and posted on Society's Insurance Risk Control website for viewing at a later time. While attendees are muted today during the presentation, we do invite you and welcome questions. You just type your question into the control panel and send them to us into the questions function. And anytime during the presentation, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And then we'll also have a time at the end of the presentation to do some question and answers. All right, first, just a little bit about us. Society Insurance was founded in 1915 as a workers' compensation insurance company. We've built over 100 years of experience in the specialized comprehensive coverage. Today, we're a regional mutual insurance carrier focusing on select business niches such as restaurants, bars, supermarkets, convenience stores, hotels and motels, and artists and contractors. Along with workers' compensation insurance, Society provides property, auto, and liability coverage, focusing on the small details that make a big difference. I am Shelby Blundell. I'll be one of your presenters today. I hold a master's degree in biosecurity and disaster preparedness from St. Louis University. I'm a FEMA instructor for continuity of operations planning. I've done training with FEMA, the American Red Cross, and other regional preparedness relief organizations. I came to Society Insurance in 2010 as part of the risk control team, and I cover the northern Illinois area and including part of Chicago. I'm joined today with Jim Sutter from our claims department, and I'll let Jim take a moment to introduce himself.
My name is Jim Sutter. I'm a graduate of University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I've been working in the insurance claims industry for the past 19 years. I'm a senior field claims representative with Society Insurance, handling large loss property claims. I've worked for Society for just over 14 years. I'm currently a council member on the Wisconsin Claims Council. I was also the prior president of the Western Wisconsin Adjusters Association.
Awesome, thanks, Jim. Just as a little bit of a housekeeping thing here, this webinar is not intended to provide or replace business-specific insurance advice or policy analysis, or provide business-specific legal advice or direction. These can only be obtained from your chosen licensed insurance agent, insurance carrier, or your legal counsel. So what exactly will we cover today? Business continuity and disaster recovery can be a complicated task. We all hope we never have to experience an event that would bring a continuity plan into action, but as we see on the news, disasters, both big and small, are happening on a historically high level, and that really puts this type of planning to the test every time a new disaster happens. Today we won't get deep into the weeds on continuity planning, but what we'll provide will help you determine where you should begin, how to start developing a business continuity plan. We'll establish some of the basic principles of continuity and recovery planning and share some valuable tools to help you along the way. You're going to find a document attached through the webinar system. It's the FEMA Small Business Continuity Plan template. I'd suggest that you either open this up now and minimize it because we'll kind of be going through this form, or if you have it available to do a quick print on it, it's kind of nice to have it handy. But go ahead and open it up so you have it ready whenever we do refer to some of the different sections on it. Okay, let's get started. We're going to start with a poll question, and this is a question for everybody out there to answer. We're going to have several poll questions throughout the presentation. These help give us an idea of what your experience is, where you are on the topic, and maybe what else we should cover. So, how many of you have a business continuity plan already in place? Okay, see, got a lot of answers coming in. Looks like so far about 77% are no, 23% do have one. So it's awesome that some of you do. Look at staying about 23% that do have one. 77% do not. So it's awesome that some of you do have one. It's awesome that you're here today if you don't have one. If you do have one, you'll still learn some things, get some ideas, some tips, some tools. If you don't have one, today is the day to get started on it. All right, so let's start out with some basic ideas and definitions associated with the idea of continuity planning. So why do we need to take the time out of our busy day to make a plan? The goals of a continuity plan are to minimize loss of life and property damage, ensure the continuous performance of essential functions and operations, protect essential facilities, equipment, records, and assets, and to mitigate disruptions to operations. Most of the businesses we work with society are small businesses. This means that you're not just a store number or a division, you're the entire business. If your doors get closed for one day, for 1 week, 1 month, or even more, it can be devastating. You may go home and start looking at your family budget and wonder how you will even get by. The effect of a disaster on your business is about 10% of the actual disaster impact, and 90% of the impact is how you respond to it. So that's 90% that you can have some control over. The goal of a continuity plan is to make sure you have answered the right questions, made the right decisions, entered into the right agreements, and so on, so that you're ready to respond quickly and effectively when necessary, which will keep the impact of your business to a minimum. In disaster planning, there are a number of different areas of planning that are very important. COOP planning, or continuity of operations planning, is the one that allows the continuation of essential functions of government departments or agencies during an emergency or incident. These can be disrupted during any emergency, but COOP planning is done at the government level or public service level to make sure that those services stay in effect. It's kind of planning into the business of government. We won't deal much with that today. Continuity of government, we won't deal much with today. The business continuity planning is where we come in. There's always overlap between all of these. You're going to need your first responders to help you. You're going to need the roads. You're going to need sanitation. You're going to need water. All of these things do affect your business. But what we're focused on today is the business continuity planning piece of it, because that's how you have control of the response. And disaster recovery is a planning tool that helps respond to information technology. There's also overlap between information technology and your businesses, but most of the small businesses that we consider here, they have very localized IT structures and not national things to consider. There are times that I might accidentally slip and say COOP during the presentation. We will always be talking about business continuity planning. I've worked a lot with COOP planning in the past, and sometimes naturally just say COOP, but we will be doing business continuity planning only. So as a business owner, you expect that there's things that are going through your mind. You run a restaurant, every day you're at the restaurant, you have a lot on your mind, a lot on your plate. On a common day, you have to order food for the next 3 weeks. You have to schedule the staff for the next 2 weeks. You have to talk to Joe about his attitude recently. You have to meet with the accountant about your taxes. You have to help take orders during the lunch rush. Then you got the pesky risk control guy that's wanting to do the insurance walkthrough. All of these things that you have to deal with. So do you really have time to devote to the business continuity plan? Hopefully it'll never be used in any way, so what's the worst that could happen, right? Well, according to the Insurance Information Institute, up to 40% of businesses affected by a natural or human-caused disaster never reopen. I'm going to repeat that because it's an important statistic. Up to 40% of businesses affected by a natural or human-caused disaster never reopen. No one wants their business to be a part of this statistic. A business continuity plan costs almost nothing to produce, but it's critical in recovering after disaster. It's absolutely worth the time and the effort. This slide is a study from 2006, the March and April issue of Continuity Insights. The KPMG Business Continuity Benchmarking Study included surveys of 935 businesses in the United States and asked them what they think is the weakest link in their current continuity planning effort. This starts to get a bit further into the weeds of the continuity planning than we really want to go today, but I thought it was really good information and worth taking a quick look. 34.51% of respondents said people risks were the weakest link. And I tend to agree with this as one of the most major considerations for business continuity planning. This includes people not being available when and where you need them, family conflicts, lack of preparation and training. This demonstrates the importance of taking care of your employees and their families. Remember, if an employee's family is not safe, they won't be as willing to do their job as well as you need them to. A quote from this article by Patrick Corcoran of IBM said, "It appears that more organizations are strengthening the people element of their plans, but it seems that the weakest link in their plans." This is in line with my observation over the past few years. It is critical that people aspects get more focus. So pay special attention to staff considerations. If the emergency is very localized, then it may not have much impact on staffing. But if there's a tornado or a hurricane or a public health emergency or something really large like that, then it could have a major regional effect and really affect your staffing, or you may have no staffing available or none that are willing to even report to work. So at that point, you're going to have to consider what can you do and what can't you do. At what levels of staffing is it necessary? What levels of staffing are necessary for you to do your job? Can you work at a 50% staffing level and still accomplish the tasks you need to do? Do you have to have 75% of your staff? Can you work with just a few staff members? It all depends on the size of your business and what it is you do and what services you provide. Just over 26% said process risks were the weakest link. This includes a documented process that's not up to date, a recovery process that's never fully tested, a process that creates a single point of failure. An example of this might be an agreement you establish for a backup generator for your grocery store, but you never followed up with the initial agreement that was made, and the company has since gone out of business and no longer can provide the generators that you thought you were going to have during this time. So there's a broken link in this chain, and that's the process. Just about almost 19% of technology said were technology risks. This is IT failures. The product you used didn't work as advertised. Technology threats like viruses and stuff that remain ahead of the technology solutions that are available. Technology that's too complex, or data that's not recoverable. And then on down, supply chain risks, into smaller things, public authority, which gets into some of the continuity planning for public sector things, and data risks. So the takeaway here is to think about what the weakest links could be in your plan, or what the weakest links are could be in your organization ahead of time, so you know what might really impact your business continuity plan more. Also keep in mind that your business could be affected by a variety of disasters. A major regional flood would be huge. This is the stuff that makes national news. This may also be the type of disaster that takes things out of your span of control and goes beyond what your business continuity plan can positively impact. However, it's far more likely that you'll experience a much smaller and more localized emergency that your business continuity plan can have a significant impact on. So think about this for a minute. You own a grocery store and a local power substation goes down. So what happens next? Either you're without power for 3 days, you lose thousands of dollars in cold storage of products, you take a hit on your business income, you're forced to shut your doors, then you're not able to take care of the neighborhood customers that have relied on you for many, many years. Those valuable customers are forced to take their business to other grocery stores that can help them out. And then you have to ask, will they come back when you reopen, or has your reputation been damaged long term? Or you could have an agreement in place with a local vendor to provide you with a portable generator that'll power to keep your products cold and safe. Your doors can stay open, your customers cared for, and your business income is still flowing. This scenario involves a little investment of time and planning, but the return on the investment is significant, especially for your reputation in the community during a time of need. Is this power outage a major disaster? No, not really. It's not going to make the national news, but it does have a major impact on you and your customers. The elderly couple down the street that have no access to a car may see your grocery store as a critical part of their own well-being. I say this at the risk of sounding a little overdramatic, but the products and services you provide may well be things that your customers rely on every single day, and a reputation in any business is a huge thing. The way a business responds to an emergency or disaster can have a long-lasting impact on the name and reputation of that business. So, where do we begin? You can find helpful resources for business continuity planning on ready.gov or FEMA.gov websites. You can also check out Society's blog. We have a blog series on business continuity. It includes planning considerations and specific tips for emergency planning for restaurants and bars specifically, and it's at blog.societyinsurance.com. I've worked with COOP plan, or continuity of operations plans, and business continuity plans that are hundreds of pages long, and they include exhausting amounts of legal paperwork, agreements, contracts. Yours doesn't need to be nearly that complicated. Business continuity plans can be expanded as needed, but they don't have to be lengthy to be good business continuity plans. Make them fit your operation. If anyone remembers, there was a show it's been quite a few years now, called The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. The main character that was played by Will Smith was Chris Gardner, who had a major business. He had a business continuity plan. I have a copy of his business continuity plan for Chris Gardner's company, and it's all on one single page. Was it adequate or was it comprehensive? In my professional opinion, no, but it was proof that you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. The bottom line is something is better than nothing at all. Any thought and planning you can put into business continuity today is something that's a step better than what you had yesterday. So, that one-page form worked for him, worked for his business as he felt appropriate. So use this template and make your business continuity plan work for you as you feel is appropriate. A good starting point is the FEMA Small Business Continuity Planning template. That's the template that I referred to at the very beginning. You should have it that you can either print out or bring up now and take a look at it. But remember, the business continuity planning template is just that. It's a template. So you're going to want to modify it to meet your specific needs. If we go back to the grocery store power outage, we're going to find that we need different power generators to run different things. You need a different level of power to run emergency lights or to keep the coolers from losing their temperature. You're also going to need a different level of power generation to keep the doors open, to run the cash registers. So you're going to have to consider what it is you expect to do and what it's going to take to do it. And this is where you can plan that and put this onto paper with the template. It really comes down to putting some serious thought into what it is you do, what you provide, and how you're going to provide it. You know your business best. How can you plan to how can your plan allow to continue you to how can your plan allow you to conduct your business after an emergency with as little impact or downtime as possible? Protect your bottom line and your reputation. You don't want to be caught completely unprepared. The next thing to consider is that the business continuity plan is a living document. Once you've developed the business continuity plan, it can't just be put on a shelf and forgotten. It has to be looked at, it has to be maintained. Have you gone to a restaurant before and discovered the most amazing dish you've ever eaten, and then you go back and have it over and over again, and then on like the 10th time you go back to have that same dish, and when you get there they say, oh, sorry, that was a seasonal item and it's been removed from the menu. We've been there. Things change. We don't necessarily like it, but we know things change. So the first thing on the FEMA Business Continuity Plan template is document change control. The business continuity plan must be reviewed at least once a year minimum. This is just a time to check to make sure everything is still in order, agreements are still current, staffing and contacts are current, and nothing has gone out of season. Going back again to the grocery store power outage example. So you need to periodically check in to make sure that that vendor that had the backup generator is still in operation. They still have the capacity to meet your needs, and just verify that any contacts or agreements are still valid and still make sense in the planning needs. You don't want to have a plan for 5 generators a year ago and then not check on it for 2 or 3 years and then have a power outage and go in and find out that the company's downsized and only has 1 generator to provide, or has gone completely out of business and has nothing for you at all. You may not love changes that come up during these reviews, but at least you don't have the fear of being caught off guard. The next section of the template is the immediate action checklist. In any emergency, it's important to react with purpose. Having a quick checklist in front of you can help you calm down, think through what's the most important, and effectively keep it all together. This checklist can be printed out and used as a cover page on a daily shift report for department managers, shift leaders, or other in the leadership positions, so that it's readily available when an unexpected event occurs. If it's right there on the top of a clipboard every single day, they've all looked at it, they all know it's there, and so if an emergency happens, they can go down that checklist and get the most important immediate items checked off in a very reasonable and orderly fashion. When something as simple as a fire alarm sounds, people naturally go into a flight or fight mode, panic, or sometimes respond in totally unexpected ways. So having that very simple checklist is like having something immediately to help them remain calm and focus on safety and leadership. This checklist isn't detailed or customized, but just presents a quick reference to the logical flow of thoughts for preservation of life, then property, and then service. Obviously, protecting the health and safety of employees, customers, and bystanders, and yourself is always the first priority. We need to think through some real basic things. Have you taken the time to think about how you would respond to different emergencies? Well, today is an ordinary business day, which is a good day to consider some very basic elements of the operation. These are the things that you just don't sit around and daydream about on a regular basis, but when they become critical and time is really of the essence, it's better to have already thought through them at some point rather than trying to do it then. But think very basic, like, where are all the fire extinguishers? Do you know where your circuit breaker panels are, how to shut them off? Do you know where the water shutoffs are? And do you need any tools to shut off the water? Do you have all of your contact information for mitigation and remediation contractors to use at a time of loss? Do you have contact information for board-up companies that are readily available? Do your key managers know how and where to shut off power or water if you're not around? Is your safe waterproof? Or do you have another safe offsite with copies of your financials, inventory, building plans, blueprints, and other documents that you might need? Have you thought about what contractors might be available and trusted to reconstruct or repair your property? I will note that it's not uncommon for the contractors that are hired for repairs to have a direct effect on how smoothly a claim goes. Reputable local contractors tend to be the best option. Some of these things do seem really basic, and they really are, but they may not be the things we ever think about until seconds really count. The answers to these questions could knock time off the recovery process, protect your investment, and minimize the overall loss. The next section of the template you're going to see is a risk assessment. A risk assessment allows you to realistically consider what could happen that might affect your business. Realistic is the key term. In Chicago, we don't really need to evaluate the risk of a hurricane, but in Oklahoma, we definitely need to consider the risk of a tornado. Chicago may have a power outage secondary to excess heat, but that isn't necessarily a significant issue in most parts of Washington State. I once developed a business continuity plan for a college campus next to an Air Force base. That brought a lot of aircraft-related risk into the picture that we would never consider for the standard business continuity plan for a college operation, but it was right next door, so that brought some risks that were realistic, that had to be considered. The risk assessment process is also a great time to think about what might actually happen during the time of crisis. For example, if you are on the same power grid as a hospital or other critical infrastructure, you may be among the first to get power restored during a power outage. These are questions you can ask your city or power provider for clarification, but it's nice to know if you happen to be near something that puts you and your business in a priority zone for power continuation and restoration. A local emergency manager should also be able to answer questions like that for you. If you can contact him usually through emergency management department, police department, or fire department, they can direct you to the emergency manager for the community. And a lot of that information he or she will know based on his or her own risk assessment that they've done. Just as you're doing your business continuity plan, the city and power companies are doing their COOP plannings, their continuity of operations planning, to make sure your public services stay in place or are restored as quickly after a disaster as possible. Alternatively, let's think about high hazard exposures in the area, like if you have a water levee or a factory with hazardous processes nearby. They have the potential to make a crisis even more disastrous because what they do could impact what you do. So we need to take a moment to think about critical business functions. To me, this is one of the most important considerations and should get the most thought during the business continuity planning process. The basic question is, what makes you you? What do you have to have to make your operation tick? A nursing home might immediately know that they need electricity to power lights, air conditioning during hot weather, linen service, food service, medication, staffing, things like that. But without proper planning, they might overlook something like replenishment of the mass liquid oxygen tanks that are going to run out a week down the road. And if a supplier is not available, there's going to be a problem. A restaurant needs power, water, food products, but Have you sat down and planned on where and how you could go about getting your fresh shrimp for your world-famous shrimp cocktail if the usual supply is unexpectedly cut off? This doesn't seem like a critical part of recovery, but if you want to keep your business doors open and you have something you're known to do well, you want to continue to do that well. So you have to consider alternate ways to get the supplies you need to make sure you do continue to do that well. No matter how big or small your business is, it has functions that are critical to its success. This is your chance to consider those critical functions before they unexpectedly stop and determine how you can effectively respond when that happens. We have another poll question for you. Most people have a mental inventory of critical business functions, but how many people have actually sat down and made a list? Just written out a list of critical functions considering staffing, utilities, technology, maintenance, vendors, your supplies, who you're going to get to do what you need to do to make your business tick. Okay. Looks like we got about 76% have not. So that's a lot of people, you know, a lot of people that haven't really sat down and taken the time when it could be considered downtime. It's not an emergency. It's not a critical time. It's a time to sit down and think about who do you need to do and what do you need to do your job, provide your service. What do you do that makes your business great? How can you continue to make that business great even if there's a bump in the road? All right, next thing to consider on the template as we go through it is, what about alternate sites? Could your business operate at a different location? This may not apply to all businesses. You know, an example could be, it would be a challenge for a lot of hospitality businesses to operate out of a different location. But it's a very important part of the business continuity planning, especially if you operate something like an office or have a computer space, things that you could continue a portion of your business. If you're an independent insurance agent's office, is there another office that's locally that you could have an agreement with that, hey, can I come set up my computers there and keep taking care of my clients while my power is out for the next week? You know, it helps keep you on your feet, but it's something to get into place before you need the alternate site. Employee vendor contact lists. Your business continuity plan must have an employee and vendor contact list. Keep in mind that these lists probably change more frequently than any other part of your business continuity plan. That means that you're going to have to review it and update it on a really regular basis. This could be something you have to update on a monthly basis. I know in the hospitality industry, employee turnover rates are not always the best, just the nature of the business. So that means your contact list is going to change. Yeah, the vendors you use to get the different supplies. You bring in a new item that you supply, you need a new vendor to go with it. You're going to have to update that list to go with it. This list needs to be accessible anytime, which means you probably need to save it in several different formats. If you have a power outage, you're going to need a hard copy ready to grab. If you can't get to your office because of a flood or whatnot, you're going to need another way to retrieve the information. You could consider like an external hard drive, saving copies to your email, saving them off-site to a computer backup, something as simple as a thumb drive, but just have multiple ways to access that information in different formats, with whether it's different location, with or without electricity, things like that. The employee contact list is also useful for a roll call. If you have an emergency that actually causes an evacuation from your business, you can use that, especially if you have the hard copy, the employee contact list, to do a roll call to make sure everyone has made it out safe and no one's left unaccounted for. If your building has experienced a fire and you realize all of your vendor information was in a file cabinet next to your desk, you'll be very happy to know that you can pull up an electronic file and start making arrangements for your vendors to bring products and things that you need to keep your business doors open, or get them open just as quickly as you possibly can after that. So, Jim, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Jim Sutter, just adding a little note on this from the claims side. After a loss occurs, there are oftentimes fire and water restoration companies that will ambulance chase these large losses. This can cause big problems later in the claims process when these companies are just looking to increase their profit margin as much as possible. In my opinion, the number one thing that can make a claim go well or have it go south is the contractor that our insured hires to make the repairs. Getting a local reputable contractor from the area tends to be the best option for both. Researching what contractor that you'd like to use before you have a loss can help you avoid these type of scams and can help the process of making the repairs go much smoother. There was a recent NBC Chicago fire episode where the fire department showed up at the scene to put the fire out, to find that the scene was surrounded by the trucks of the fire and water restoration company. They needed to break through these vehicles to put the fire out. Unfortunately, it is more common that these companies will try to aggressively secure a restoration job with our insureds to become very, and they become very convincing. It is becoming more often that public adjusters are showing up on scene to secure jobs after a loss as well. Public adjusters can really inflate damages as well as cause the process to really slow down. Moving on to some insurance considerations, just looking at the coverage under the policy and how important that is. If an event occurs, how will this affect you? Do you have coverage for flood? Do you have business interruption coverage for certain type of losses, or service interruption coverage for certain type of losses, and or civil authority coverage? And what does your policy cover you for? Many of these coverages, flood is one of those coverages that the standard ISO policy does not cover, and or does the most commercial insurance policies cover. Business interruption, service interruption, and civil authority, if there's a coverage under the policy is for additional coverage for those items, oftentimes the loss still has to stem from a covered cause of loss. The last 2 pages of the business continuity template include questions that FEMA wants you to ask yourself, your insurance agent, your carrier. Let's look at some of these insurance considerations. Flood insurance. Most small business insure for flood insurance through National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. This provides coverage for up to $500,000 for building and $500,000 for contents. Flood insurance for business interruption is not available through NFIP if desired. It must be obtained from a commercial insurer, and most oftentimes is not part of the standard policy. If you are located near a coast or a river, is storm surge classified as flood or as windstorm? The coverage for flood may be different from the coverage for hurricane, which is oftentimes considered a windstorm coverage. In some cases, the storm surge that occurs as a result of a hurricane is classified as flood. In other cases, it is classified as windstorm. After Hurricane Sandy, many policyholders found themselves uninsured or underinsured since the storm surge was classified as flood. They may have had adequate coverage for windstorm, but they had inadequate coverage for flood. Business interruption. Business interruption covers policyholders for loss of profits, plus continuing expenses when their business is forced to close after an insured loss. This critical coverage for recovering business loss, note that many insurance carriers include a waiting period. In addition, the loss still has to be a result of a covered cause of loss. Service interruption coverage is similar. It provides coverage for loss of power. However, many insurance carriers exclude coverage if the loss of the power is caused by damage to overhead power lines within a certain distance from the insured policy or the insured property. Civil authority coverage insures for business interruption loss if your business is impacted by a governmental action that restricts access to your location. This coverage may be specifically excluded in some of the insurance policies. In your webinar control panel, you will find handouts with additional details on some of these coverages. You may click and download them from there. Moving on to some additional insurance considerations, are the limits under the policy sufficient? What are the deductibles under the policy? Determine if the limits under your policy are sufficient. All insurance policies have overall policy limits and specific limits for different types of coverage. Review your policy carefully to make sure that your coverage is reasonable. Every property is different and should be reviewed for its specific differences. A square footage approach for determining value of a typical structure may not take into account unique features that your property may have. Know your deductible. Insurance policies often have a single dollar deductible for most losses, a certain amount per occurrence. However, some policies have specific deductibles for high-risk type losses, like hurricane and floods. For example, in many states, they carry a percentage deductible for hurricane damage. It could be a 15 to 5% of your coverage limit. Check your policy carefully and understand what your deductible would be in that case. Do you have business interruption coverage for certain types of losses? Do you have key assets that may take a long time to replace? Do you have a plan in effect for that? Do you have more than one location? If you have key customers or suppliers, do you have business interruption coverage? How would your business be impacted if one of your key suppliers or customers is impacted by a significant incident such as hurricane, fire, or explosion? If a significant portion of your revenue is dependent upon a key supplier or a key customer, you should consider whether your business interruption coverage would apply. Do you have any assets that have long lead time and may take significant time to replace should a loss occur? If some key assets may take a long time to replace, consider having spares or vendors ready to execute purchase order if a loss occurs. If you have more than one location, have you considered how an incident at one location will impact the other location? For some businesses, a significant loss at one location can result in additional loss to another location due to the interdependencies. For other businesses, if one location suffers a loss, another location can help mitigate the loss by shifting employees and other resources. Think through your catastrophic loss at one location could impact how other locations are impacted. And now we have another poll question here. Does your policy cover you for things like ordinance and law or code upgrades that are required by the city, state, or local municipality after a covered loss? Now for the Standard Insurance Service Office, or ISO policy, that is mandated to be regulated by your state, covers you for direct physical damage resulting from a covered cause of loss. So does your policy also cover you for things like ordinance and law or code upgrades that are required by the state, city, or local municipality? Now, many policies will offer a certain amount of coverage or a limited amount of coverage. You can also often endorse additional coverage to this ordinance and law coverage. It looks like the polls came in and it looks like about 72% of the people said that they do have coverage for ordinance and law, and 26% said they don't. The society's TVP2 policy, standard policy, does give coverage for up to $50,000 in ordinance and law. I'm unaware of another carrier that offers similar coverage to that extent, but that's definitely something that you may want to look at to see if additional amounts need to be endorsed, or if the policy that relates to your business has coverage for that. So we'll turn this back over to Shelby for the summary here.
All right, thanks, Jim. That was good information. So this has been a really basic introduction to business continuity planning, and we have to start really basic to make this make sense, and two, to give you an opportunity to build a foundation to grow a good business continuity plan from. A large, complex continuity plan is not going to make sense for a very small mom and pop shop, but a very well thought out small business continuity plan can really make an impact on how you survive a disaster, how your business survives a disaster, minimize the losses and downtime. So let's recap a few of the takeaways. Now is the time to do a business continuity plan, not after an event has happened. You know, right now you have an afternoon, it's cold outside, you can't go out and play basketball, so stay in, think through these things, you know, fill out the template, make it your own, make it something that actually works for you, make it work for your business. It's your business, you've worked hard to develop, let's work hard to make sure it continues. A business continuity plan will not eliminate all losses or harm brought by a disaster, but it will help minimize the impact to your life, to the life of your employees, your customers, to your property, and to your business reputation. And a lot of people don't put enough thought into just how responses like this do impact your business's reputation. You come out with an amazing response to any kind of disaster, people are going to remember that, and it's going to grow your business. A business continuity plan can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it, but any plan is better than no plan at all. So right now is a good time to start, fill out the template, get the basics down, and then decide if you need to expand it, make it more complicated, how many agreements you need in place, how many contacts you need, how many copies of things do you need stored. It's your own plan. The FEMA template that I shared is a good starting point for most small business operations, but there's a lot more resources on FEMA's website at www.fema.gov. There's also tools at ready.gov, which is also a federal website. Check out Society's blog series on business continuity, which includes planning considerations and specific tips for emergency planning for restaurants and bars specifically. And you can also contact your local agent to discuss your business insurance coverages or considerations related to disasters, large or small. And give us some feedback also. Let us know if there's an interest in going a little more in depth with the business continuity planning beyond what we've gone today, or share us with feedback of what ideas you have that would be good potential future webinars about coverages or whatnot. We're happy to hear that kind of feedback. We do hope you've enjoyed the presentation today and have learned a little information about business continuity planning that will help your business and help you get a good start on it. Now we'd like to open it up and invite some questions if you have any. We've covered a lot of the material, and so you may have some questions. Just type them into the webinar control panel and send them to us, and we'll answer as many of them as we can if you have them. Anybody have any questions for us so far, Jim?
Are standby generators a good idea?
Are standby generators a good idea is the question I'm getting, and yes, they depending on the type of business you run, there's a lot of companies out there that are there just for this case, that you can contract with them that they will provide a certain number of generators at a set cost, and they'll give you a specific response time of when they'll have them. You can pre-test them to make sure they're going to work with your equipment. So it takes all of those little speed bumps out of the way before there's ever a disaster that happens that you need one. Especially if you get into the large metro areas, they can be more difficult to come by because of just the need for them, the demand, which is also a good time to be doing it ahead of time before there is a more huge demand, because right after a disaster it's going to be impossible. You could also consider, like if you're a grocery store, consider contracting with a grocery store down the street or across town that likely wouldn't be on the same power grid as you, that if your power goes down, that you could transport as much of your frozen and cold goods to their store and just store it. You guys could have a mutual aid agreement in place between the two of you that would cost a whole lot less than a third party, and you'd be looking out for each other. You're kind of competitors, but if you're not in the same area of town, you're more, you're not really in competition with each other as much as you are just in the same industry, and you could work together to come up with a plan for that and have an agreement in place. So the second it happens, you pick up the phone and say, Joe, I've got you on my call list. We got our power out. It's not going to be back for a week. Can we kick in this agreement? I can have my stuff there in 3 hours, and you're good to go. So
looks like that's all the questions for us here today. So.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions, then we do thank you very much for joining us. We'll be sending out a follow-up survey via email shortly, and we really do appreciate your feedback. We do have additional webinars on the calendar, and we're proud to provide these as flexible learning opportunities that you can do from your desk or your home office. So don't miss our next webinar. The next one we have scheduled is active shooter preparation. It's Friday, December 8th at 10 a.m. If you want to register for this webinar, it's at societyinsurance.com. Click under Risk Management on the Risk Management tab at the top of the page. Then click on Education and Training from either the drop-down menu or in the gray box at the left-hand side of the page. The webinar is listed here in the registration link. We hope you'll join us then and share your opportunity with your friends. To learn more about how Society Insurance can protect your business, visit societyinsurance.com. This has been fun. We really do thank you. Hope we brought some basic information that you can take home and start the process of building your business continuity plan and get prepared before it's really necessary. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again.